Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you, as always, for stopping by. I'm always grateful. Macro thoughts. The pound was the world's worst performing currency last month. I'm not sure if that's correct. I think it might turn out that it was the Mozambique Metical. So I should really take that up with Bloomberg. But anyway, it was a poor performance, and having initially been pretty constructive, thinking it was very badly oversold, that would see stronger data than the market was expecting, and therefore the pound would be supported. I turned my mind 180 degrees because of the political language. Essentially, the politicians know that the votes lie with Brexit. They're therefore going to use very hardcore rhetoric in that respect, and that's going to keep scaring the pound for now. Home thoughts. In Johannesburg, this is the time of year when all the purple comes out, and it's not only Johannesburg, it's all the way up to Nairobi, all over Africa. I just took this photograph and had to share it. This is Matthew Mole, beautiful photograph. It is like a sea of lilac. It's so beautiful. Window seats, because you get to view the world from a different perspective. That's Nikki Sunderland. She's not wrong. It's always a toss-up for me because I'm quite tall, but if I'm not flying business, then I do prefer to be at the window seat, but it gets very claustrophobic. Rules for dating my daughter. This is from White Ash, and I have to agree with him. Having 3 of my own, I certainly would take a similarly hard line. All the war propaganda, all the screaming and lies and hatred comes invariably from people who are not fighting. Homage to Catalonia. Very correct as well. Every human life includes moments of rage at unrecognition. Jonathan Lethem, who, if you haven't read, you should, is a great writer. Could the F.B.I.'s October surprise win the election for Donald Trump, asks Vanity Fair. And don't we all at this moment? According to the latest polls, the gap is just 2 points. That is a statistical dead heat. In fact, on the 19th of September, I wrote that the second thing to observe is that event risk surely favors Trump. I was thinking more along the lines of a terrorist attack a day before the election. And I said, now where will the world be in the event of a President Trump? Who really knows or can predict that? Slate is asking, was a Trump server communicating with Russia? This spring, a group of computer scientists set out to determine whether hackers were interfering with the Trump campaign. They found something they weren't expecting. Raheem Kassam quits Ukip's leadership race. And just take a look, and it's pretty interesting that he was actually even standing. The interesting point that I observed in England was I had a Pakistani minicab driver taking me to the airport, and I turned to him and I said, what did you vote for? Expecting, of course, a vote to remain. He said, Brexit. I said, why? He said, all these polls are taking our jobs. And I still a little bit amused by that. One for the camera at the Nandan Van Jungle Safari in Naya Raipur, Narendra Modi. Currency markets, the euro is just above 109.90 at 109.91, dollar index 98.28, Japanese yen 105 the figure, Swissy 0.9881, the pound 122.51, the Aussie was at around 665, having had a strong run up earlier this morning, India rupee 66.705, South Korean won 11.40.51. That softened up with the scandal, and it's extraordinary reading, isn't it? About that's another example of state capture, I suppose. Brazilian real 3.199, Egyptian pound 8.88, and the South African rand had a storming day yesterday, and that was on the Gordon rebound. Got us, and last was trading at 13.50. Moving on, dollar index, let me put up a 3-month chart. You can see we've had a pretty good run up in last 3 months. My view is that we're going to hit 100. Commodity markets, gold was last trading around the 1279 level. I think it's capped by 1300. But let's look at some other commodities today. Oil has dropped below the Algiers deal level as doubts grow in OPEC production cut by November 30th. It's not going to happen, in my view, and therefore oil is going to tank, and I think it's a big sell. I agree with Goldman Sachs who's saying it's heading to $40 if OPEC fails. I think OPEC is destined to fail, and I'm not so sure OPEC is that important anymore. The US, I noticed, have already bumped up supply about 200,000 barrels per day over the last month. Brent oil, Aurelia called this rally earlier during the time of the Algiers deal, and I must say she's called it right a few times. But this time I think we're going to find we're going to give up ground and we're headed lower. Look at these sorts of prices of these commodities. Coking coal prices started the year at under $80. They're now pushing closer to $250. Iron ore prices in China just topped 500 yuan a ton. And then you'll notice why, after a descent to hell, miners emerge blinking into daylight. When the biggest names in mining arrived in London this week, the surroundings will be familiar, the mood unrecognizable. A year ago, as prices slumped, talk at the annual Metal Exchange gathering was of bloodletting and journeys through hell. On Tuesday, the 1,900 dinner guests under the huge tulip-shaped chandeliers of the great room in Park Lane's Grosvenor House Hotel will be relieved to have survived the industry's biggest crisis in decades. This time last year, I was talking about a commodity-specific financial crisis. Colin Hamilton, who's of Macquarie Group, the rally in commodity prices has taken that off the table. The foot is really off the throat. Zinc has hit its near 5-year highs as well. And then an interesting report about something we don't normally talk about. Cashew prices are about to go nuts, apparently. Get ready for some cashew sticker shock. The global popularity of the kidney-shaped nut has been growing faster than any other tree nut, even almonds. Demand jumped 53% since 2010, industry data show. Now, the worst drought in a century for Vietnam, the largest exporter, is raising concerns that supplies will be even tighter in a market valued at $5.2 billion. A lack of rain in the once fertile Mekong Delta and elsewhere in Vietnam has cut output of its major agricultural exports, including rice, black pepper, coffee, and seafood. This year's cashew harvest fell 11%, and domestic prices jumped by as much as a third to an all-time high. A growers group estimates that spells trouble for buyers in the US, by far the biggest importer. Peanuts, which grow underground, are by far the most popular in the nut world. Cashews have overtaken walnuts and pistachios in recent years to trail only almonds in the $30 billion market for tree nuts, International Nut and Dried Fruit Council data show. Global cashew consumption in 2014, the most recent data available, reached a record 716,682 metric tons. The domestic price of raw nuts have jumped to 52,000 dong, the highest on record, from 38,000 dong at the start of the year. Interesting, isn't it? Soft commodities and these sort of industrial commodities have been doing well. Sub-Saharan Africa, Maroc, manifestation après la mort tragique du vendeur du poisson. And this is the death of a fish seller, which has triggered massive demonstrations in Morocco. The king, however, seems to be having a good time in East Africa at the moment, so he's not at home. Mozambique, from boom to bust, a cautionary tale, was my piece over the weekend. And then Joseph Hanlon in the Club of Mozambique has written a piece as well. The House of Cards has collapsed. Last week we saw the final collapse of the House of Cards, he says, built from greed and hubris. Mozambique admitted it cannot pay its debts. Last week it was announced poverty and inequality increased, and it was accepted that inflation will hit 30% and devaluation will exceed 100%. The United States announced that LAM has accepted bribes from Brazil, and then the mediators went home in frustration as an unwinnable war continues, with Renamo demanding the impossible and Frelimo refusing to make essential concessions. Frelimo has blown an incredible $3 billion, not just the $2.2 billion in secret debt, but extra money for the Katempe Bridge, Nacala Airport, the Bank of Mozambique building, and the Presidential Palace, as well as large state company debts. And last week the cost became clearer with the admission that Maputo will not now have an essential bus rapid transit system because it cannot guarantee the loan. This is being repeated across the economy. Last week, the House of Cards collapsed. This week, many people will be trying to explain why they did not see that it was a House of Cards, and will be trying to defend their positions, in some cases to prevent themselves being dismissed, jailed, or losing contracts, or the confidence of their superiors. Threats of a demonstration on 29th April were met with new armoured cars on the streets of Maputo. A demonstration scheduled for 21st May was banned, and an organiser of the march was beaten during an attempted kidnap. Maputo has been quiet since then, despite an escalating cost of living. But how long will ordinary people tolerate rising prices and a bankrupt and ineffective government? Not very long, especially if bread prices go up. RDC de révélation gênante pour la famille Kabila à la Une Journal Belge. This is RFI, which I translated. Sensational revelations about the DRC in a Belgian daily Le Soir. They're mostly very embarrassing for the family of Joseph Kabila. Jean-Jacques Lumumba, senior officer of the BGFI, slammed the door of the bank in Kinshasa close to the family of the Congolese president after refusing to be complicit in suspicious transactions. He went on to deliver numerous and compromising files to the Belgian daily. One of the documents released by the Belgian daily Le Soir shows, for example, that one of the accounts of the Independent National Electoral Commission, CENI of Congo, which housed the money to finance elections in the DRC, was regularly punctured, and this under very shady conditions. You've got to read it in full, it's extraordinary. The head of the NPA, Sean Abrahams, drops the charges against Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan and other executives from SARS. And there was no other option. It was becoming a complete and utter mess on Zuma's side. And as I've said, Pravin was proven very Sun Tzu, very clever at manoeuvring. Theo Vento, who's a political analyst at the Northwest University in Potchefstroom, west of Johannesburg, says this is a new chapter in the war between Zuma and Gordhan. The obvious strategy to get Gordhan out of the cabinet failed. It is going to be very, very hard to remove Gordhan now. President Zuma's trying to interdict a state capture report as we speak. So you can really see how the tables have turned. It's been quite an extraordinary development, in my view. South African all shares up 0.2% this year. Dollar versus rand got a massive Gordhan bounce yesterday, and we're last around the 1350 level. The central bank will unify the Egyptian pound's official and black market exchange rates as soon as possible. This is the Prime Minister Sharif Ismail. The Egyptian pound has lost almost 40% of its value in October on the black market, where it trades at more than double the official rate of 8.88 pounds per dollar. Officials devalued the pound in March in an attempt to put black market traders out of business and to attract overseas investment. Egyptian EGX 30 is plus 19.7%, a lot of that because of the possible devaluation. Nigerian all share down 4.97% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 13.36% this year. Mugabe has decreed regulations paving the way for bond notes. Sidestep Parliament issued a decree clearing the way for the introduction of bond notes that have raised fears of a return to a domestic currency abandoned in 2009 as hyperinflation crippled the economy. Haru Mutasa has put out a tweet tweet which shows you the actual comments from the Reserve Central Bank and from the Finance Minister exactly about this. Uganda says Total will take a stake in its planned oil refinery. Not much of one, just 10%. But that represents progress for Uganda. How a group of friends used Instagram to show off the real Senegal and start a business of their own. I just like the photograph. It's very nice. Kenya. CS Amina Mohammed welcomed His Excellency John Pombe Magufuli, the President of the Republic of Tanzania, who arrived in Kenya for a 2-day visit. I was interviewed in The Nation where I said, where he was asking why is Magufuli's visit crucial, and I said, I'm hoping this visit might prove an opportunity to reset relations, seek better alignment between our countries. There is so much to be gained from being collaborative rather than adversarial. President Kenyatta has a Bill Clinton charm, and if advising him, I would say, look, reach in, cut through the noise, and start telling the bulldozer that it needed to be a zero-sum game. Our relationship with our neighbor has been suboptimal for a long time. There is an opportunity here to reset relations. I hope we can seize it. I said Magufuli has captured the East African imagination with his no-nonsense and populist style. He has some serious feathers in his cap already. The pipeline and the railway are two very big geopolitical wins right there, so we need to treat him as a worthy and already proven adversary. This is a photograph from Magufuli with the President at State House. And then in another interview with Voice of America, Kenya is quite important to Tanzania. This is what Magufuli himself said when he arrived on Monday. Cited data from the Tanzania Investment Center, which reports that 529 Kenyan companies have invested roughly $1.7 billion in Tanzania, creating employment for about 56,000 Tanzanians. It is the fastest growing economy in East Africa, according to the IMF. President Kenyatta said the countries would revive the Kenya-Tanzania Joint Commission for Cooperation before year's end to enhance investment and trade. The state visit is meant to strengthen the relations between two countries, Kenyatta said, adding that if Kenya and Tanzania are to expand their economies and create jobs for youth, then the countries should walk together. Economic relations between the two nations have been somewhat strained by competition. In March, Uganda opted to run a large oil pipeline through Tanzania instead of Kenya. Uganda cited security concerns and a price tag that was $1 billion cheaper than the one proposed by Kenya. Tanzania also won a deal to host a new railway line that will connect the DRC and the East African coast. And just last month, Tanzania pushed the 6-member EAC to delay signing an economic partnership agreement with the European Union, which would guarantee traders duty-free access to the EU market. Kenya supported the treaty. I said that this week's state visit offers Kenyatta a chance to recalibrate relations with Magufuli after a series of setbacks. He's scored some big wins against Kenya, citing the oil pipeline railway deal, says a worthy adversary, somebody who obviously very focused on the Tanzanian national interest. But given the current situation, I think Kenya would be wise to try and sort of reset existing relations, look at what can be done to increase trade and seek better alignment as the East African community and the market open up. According to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, Kenya is Tanzania's largest trading partner in Africa. There's been a whole lot of skullduggery going on at the Ministry of Health. The PS Muruguri's letter to Henry Rotich sought the removal of the auditor. I actually had a lot to do with them. I did some work for a US company called Varian. So I have some insights into this. Greetings from Safaricom. I went to their Safaricom Sustainability Report launch this morning. And then I'll be there on Friday to interview Bob after his half-year results. A lot came out of that, and I'll just give you a few clips. Always remember where you come from. My family shared a pit latrine, said Bob Colimon. Safaricom, the total value we created for Kenya's economy was 6% of Kenya's GDP. Nairobi all share down about 4% this year. Nairobi and SE20 down 20.08% this year. IATA leave nothing to chance, says Budi Gunze, the CEO of Kenya Airways. Kenya Airways, of course, is up about 40.81% year to date, but that hasn't been to do with Budi. That's been to do with Michael Joseph arriving at KQ. Once again, wishing you a great week.